We are in the middle of 16 days of activism against violence against women and girls. Our guest tonight is a woman who believes pornography and sex is a main factor to our increasing sexual violence. She's working with many churches across Australia and Fiji to do something about it. Letitia, welcome to On Point.
Thank you, Alan, for having me.
Oh, you're so welcome. Pornography, I mean, it is a very topical subject. It's affecting communities across the globe and in a very adverse way, which is detrimental to community across the world. How did you get into this work?
Well, I've been for the last 20 years working with girls and women in my city of Toowoomba back in Australia.
Yes.
And we work with many girls who have been sexually abused. In fact, 1 in 3 have been sexually abused. And I just remember one day reading our national newspaper and seeing that the #1 abuser in our nation was the brother, because they were watching pornography and then they'd act out what they'd seen on the sister. So I thought, I want to get to the bottom of what is driving this sexual abuse, the domestic violence. I then learnt that 88% of pornography is violence against women. So, you know, you'll be picking up the pieces forever, but you want to get to the bottom and actually be preventative. So that's why I've started to
What were those statistics again, Letitia? That is just shocking.
Yeah, 88% of pornography is violence against women. So it's no longer just a centerfold of a naked woman in a magazine. It's basically multiple partners, choking, hitting, slapping, pulling hair. And so, yeah, this is what is fueling a lot of our domestic violence issues.
So you came across those statistics and then you decided you needed to do something about it.
I wanted to do something, particularly in my city, and I've got a great relationship with our mayor. And he said, I want to get behind you on this. So we started a campaign called A City Free from Pornography, which is a crazy name and almost impossible.
Well, not only is it crazy, it's an absolute massive task to take on. I mean, you're in Australia, and it could have been anywhere else, but you know, you're talking about a whole suburb, Toowoomba.
Yeah, 150,000 people.
And
look, you know, practically speaking, unless we ban the internet, we can't do it.
Well,
but I'm really
impossible.
Taking on the angle, a little bit like the anti-smoking campaign. Our government's done a great job at educating us on the harms of smoking. And so what we're trying to do in our city is educate particularly our young people that if you're going to watch pornography, well, this is what's going to happen to you. It affects you in so many different ways.
The thing about pornography, though, you know, I looked at the word and I looked at the meaning on the net, again on the net, as everybody else is looking on. And does it have to be a bad thing? Because the meaning of pornography, as it says on the internet, is that it's printed or visual material containing the explicit description or display of social organs for activity intended to stimulate sexual excitement. So between a couple who have agreed to it, whether they be married or not, the intention is generally should have been a positive one.
Yeah, you've got to think about who's on the other end of the camera. And so I've talked to many porn stars now, and you think, well, it's just their choice, they're getting paid good money, but you know, I think of a friend of mine back in my home city who was just she was a nurse in her 20s, and a man came up and said you could earn a lot more money through some photo shoots. So she got involved, thought it was harmless, but then they began to add more to her contract. She began...
And to the content.
And to the content. She ended up being a porn star in LA and Amsterdam, but ended up on drugs because you're physically abused.
Yes, indeed, indeed.
So, you know, it might be harmless you watching it in your bedroom or whatever, but think of the people on the other end. This is, again, violence against women. So to me, there's no such thing as good pornography. Oh,
well, that puts that one to bed, so to speak. So how did you, what are you doing in Fiji, and what was your connection in bringing your project to Fiji?
I'm here because back when I was 15, I attended ACS, Andi Thakambauer School. Our family came and lived here for 1 year. So it was a great year. I love Fiji and have a lot of good friends. So
were you boarding at ACS?
No,
or
I was just a day scholar.
Student,
we lived in Nassori.
How was that for you, going to a, you know, ACS is a very well-known school, it's a very popular school, it's a very successful school in terms of its graduates. How did that feel for you? An Australian woman in a mainly Itoke Fijian school.
I loved it. It was just a lot of fun. Classmates were a lot of fun. I'm not sure if I did any learning. I can't remember.
You must have.
But I joined the hockey team, and we did really well at that, and just built a lot of relationships. But I felt very white.
Yes, well you would have, because you would have
Yes.
stood out like a sore thumb, as they say. Well, what did you like most about living in Fiji in those days? What year was that?
That was 1990.
Oh,
so
fabulous, yes.
quite old. Look, I just loved the friendships, I think, that I built here during that time.
Right, and you live in Toowoomba now, and this project you've brought across to Fiji, how well received, or has it been well received?
Yeah, look, it's still early days, but it's my classmates who invited me back, class of 93, who just said come and speak to us about what's happening with girls, with women, how we can help, and particularly around the area of pornography. So look, it's been an eye-opener. It's been just the beginning, but no, there's great reception.
Right, and does it make you feel good that you've come to give something back to Fiji, and particularly in that area?
Yeah, look, I mean, it's not about me. I'm not here for myself. I think yes, I'm so thankful I can sow back into Fiji.
Yes, right.
But it's, you think of all the little children in your nation and the women who are being abused. That's what motivates me.
Oh, that's great. We're talking to Australian woman Letitia Shelton, whose work to reduce pornography in her hometown Toowoomba has spread to Fiji, where she grew up. We talk more about that in the next segment. Letitia Shelton was educated in Fiji in the 1990s. When her work to address pornography and sexual violence started to bear fruits in Australia, she thought of her Fijian friends too. So Letitia, you mentioned that your friends had invited you to come back. These are mainly the students that ex-students you've kept in touch with.
Yes.
And then earlier on you talked about the City Women Toowoomba. What is that program, and what does it do?
Yeah, that's an organisation I pioneered about 18 years ago.
Right.
It's really an umbrella for about 15 other different organisations that are helping girls and women. So we do work with pregnant women, we do work with refugees, with girls in schools. We run a lot of programs across the schools. With our sex workers in our city, we give them support. So it's a whole range. But the amazing thing is that we're working together as churches. So our volunteers, about 200 volunteers, come from different churches across our city because we want to make Toowoomba a better place for girls and women.
And you're a pastor as well, aren't you?
I am, yeah.
So when did that happen?
2000, yes.
Right.
I studied in the USA and came back and was ordained as a minister in my church.
And is that being a pastor, was that part of that put you on the journey that you're on to help women who've been sexually violated via pornography?
Definitely. My dad's a pastor too, and he always made the statement that we're here to pastor our city. So just because people don't walk into the doors of our church, we're still responsible for the people in our city. So I've always looked at my city and what's going on and where are the needs and how can we address them.
And of course you work with the city fathers to help execute the solutions or find solutions. So how does it all work? How do you find victims and then what's the application process?
I mean, through those different organisations, we just come across women all the time. When you think there's 1 in 3 that are sexually abused, it's not hard to look.
Really?
Yes.
Do people actually come to your organisation and say, I've been sexually abused and I'm looking for assistance?
Not so much that way, because we run a program in 30 schools in our city. So that's where we begin to encounter the girls and hear their stories and some of their issues.
The girls at school?
Yeah. Now, not all of them have been abused, but, they all need support and encouragement, so we engage through the schools. Then we run weekend camps for teenage girls that way. So it just depends what area you're seeking help in.
Do you think the weekend camps in the school, is it literally a subject part of the school curriculum?
No.
Right.
No, they're not.
Do you think there's room for something like that, or is it too...
Look, I mean, the programs we run, it's not part of the school curriculum, but the schools are very happy for us to come in because they see that the girls need help.
Right.
And then the camps that we run on weekends, they're optional, so girls get to opt in and determine if they want to go to that, and we've taken away 3,000 girls.
That's excellent. So just going back to the school students who have been affected, is it something that could be put into a school curriculum? Going back to, especially when you mentioned that a lot of these women have been sexually violated by their brothers. So all kids go to school. If the program was introduced at an early age, do you think that there's, it could work?
Oh, look, I think, more
early programming that this is not the thing to do to your sister.
More awareness.
Or anyone else for that matter.
What I'd love to see is parents talk to their children about pornography at an early age, so that is not, so they don't get addicted to that, because then that will then stop the abuse, hopefully, or help curb it anyway. So I'd love to be able to help equip parents.
Because it all starts at home, doesn't it?
It does.
95% of anything that happens to a child begins at home. And so the parents needing to be the ones to teach their children that this is, taboo. It's not what you do. It's not what we want you to do, and it's not the way to treat your family members or anybody. Do you think it'd be a difficult subject for parents, though?
Yeah, it's a whole new generation, and the kids are way ahead of us with technology, with phones, and so parents, it is a challenge for them to get updated, to be aware of what our children are into, and to know how to speak, because it's not always easy,
So,
but it's vital.
There's something else you touched on earlier on, and I suppose this is going to be really interesting for the audience. How does pornography lead to sexual violence?
Well, when you consider that 88% of pornography is violence against women, it has it's the equivalent to a drug, so it's actually rewiring your brain, pornography. And I've spoken to top brain surgeons in America, and they actually have the stats, the stories on what it does to your brain. So you begin to look at a woman like an object. She's no longer somebody to protect.
Or to have a good time with, because you're in a good relationship with.
No, it's, yes.
So does it mean that increased sexual activity being supposedly enjoyed by both, if it goes back to the couple that I mentioned earlier on in the piece, then becomes aggressive because they just become so,
we have women in our country dying because they're being choked to death during sex.
Yes, right, yes.
And I think you do too.
Yes.
In your nation. And so this has now become a whole new thing. And I was at a forum in my city where one of the doctors from our hospital who treats women with domestic violence injuries, he said, we've had a big rise in choking injuries. And I was sitting there thinking, that's because there's been a big rise in porn, but no one wants to really...
Right. But that big rise in porn must also be related to the increased usage of the internet.
Well,
whatever's on the internet and the lack of restrictions of the type of material that goes onto the internet.
Porn drives the speed of the internet.
Really?
Well, because people want more and more porn. When the internet started, we had to sit at our computer and wait for everything to dial in and download. But so the porn industry has driven the faster internet connections, the PayPal systems there, and now they're driving this 3D technology, the virtual reality masks, where you can watch porn 3D.
Oh my goodness.
And so the porn industry is a $150 billion industry.
$150 billion. And how much does it cost to try and address the actual situation?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think it needs to cost too much. I think it takes some courageous leaders at political levels, at church levels, at community levels to say, we don't want this.
How do you think it could work here in Fiji? How do you think those solutions or any solution can help?
Yeah, I think we can do
here in Fiji
better with, and this is something we've been working in Australia, is having better filtering on our internet where you have to opt in to the pornography. So at the moment, pornography is just free and can pop up on your computer anywhere.
Let's come back to that in a minute, because that's, we're getting to the real crucial point of this. Letitia has managed to reconnect with a large network of her former classmates from Andi Dakambar School who have helped push her work along to some of the highest offices in the land. So more about this next. Welcome back. We're talking to Letitia Shelton, an Australian who was educated in Fiji. She's working with government leaders, churches, schools, mothers' clubs, and even rugby teams to help Fijians understand the damaging nature of pornography and sexual messages in a mainstream society. So, Letitia, I wouldn't want to be in your shoes because it is a very difficult and a very delicate subject to talk to, particularly in a country like Fiji, which is supposedly quite conservative. Yet, at the same time, we had, there was a news outbreak, a news break that Fijians rated very highly on the internet as viewers of pornography. When I saw that, I was actually quite shocked, because here we are, a Christian nation, meant to be really lovely, gentle people. That's what we sell in tourism, to attract people to come and enjoy our hospitality. And yet, on a website that I saw the other day, or yesterday, it was called SimilarWeb. It's a site that has over 80 million websites, but not one, but 3 of those pornography sites are featuring Fiji as, huge users.
Yeah.
You have your stats about that. How does this happen when we're meant to be, it's not what Christian people do.
No, apparently not, but possibly. What I read was that Fiji rates 4th in the world for Googling porn, and part of the article stated because you don't talk about it, and it is such taboo, there's a lot of curiosity, especially in children, so they are Googling it.
Children?
The first exposure to porn is age 8. That's when children start.
8 years old?
Yeah, between the age of 8 and 11.
Why would an 8-year-old child, who's probably never had sex, why would they go to the internet to have a look at it?
Well, sometimes they don't. There's a whole bunch of ways why 8-year-olds come in contact with porn. Porn is predatory, so it's looking for our kids. So somewhere it might have popped up in front of them, and so then they want to see more, so they start Googling. That can be a reason why, or because they've heard from other kids on the streets or in schools. You might be doing a great job with your child and educating them and doing everything, but they've got friends and they're exposed everywhere. And so, it's really time that we start to have these conversations at a church level. Because, as I said, it's an American pastor said that this is the greatest threat to the existence of the church, pornography.
Well, that's not, not an unusual thing to say when you think about some of the religious orders globally where, this has happened. In Fiji, we also have had the same situation.
Yeah, and I think let's bring it out into the light. Let's take away the shame. Let's help people find freedom and forgiveness and wholeness.
Does Christianity make look at sex as being a dirty activity and for the one main reason to procreate?
I hope not. Not the Christianity I've been a part of. We look at it as something that God's created. It's beautiful, it's amazing. But maybe some sectors of the church have certainly frowned upon it. But no, I think we should celebrate what God's created there.
Exactly. So therefore you're saying churches should talk about it much more openly, and it shouldn't be such a taboo subject, because when you say don't to somebody, do not do that, what do? You go and do the exact opposite.
Now, if you were sick and you had cancer in your body, you would want it to be diagnosed and you'd want it out.
Absolutely.
And pornography is a cancer to our society. We're covering it up like nothing's wrong. No one wants to diagnose. No one wants to draw it out. It's a can of worms. But it's going to kill. It is killing our societies. And there's no accident that Fiji has huge domestic violence, sexual assault, rape statistics when you've got this porn, the top 4th in the world.
Do you think that the increase of rape cases in Fiji and sexual violence has been due to the internet?
Absolutely.
On it, whether the government can actually put a ban on on pornographic
Yes.
sites?
You can, and I've heard of other countries, I just can't think off the top of my head, where they have been able to ban pornography in their nation.
Right.
And just put a blanket over all the
Right.
internet that way. So there are things you can do.
Is that part of your job and your role in Fiji? Because you've met with many MPs, you've presented to school children whilst you've been here, to actually talk to the government about ways of halting the process?
Yeah, I met with the Minister for Women on Monday.
Right. Oh, yes.
And had a great conversation with her.
Yes.
And I think it's a new thought for her that pornography is, so I'm just beginning to put it on the table. We talked about some strategies. We talked about having a Pacific Summit to end sexual exploitation next January. So we've got some things that are boiling away at how can we really bring some unity around this issue to come up with real solutions.
And for instance, can you talk about one of the solutions you might have?
Oh man, well, maybe after the forum
Yes,
I can tell you. But I think yes,
But has it been well accepted? Are people willing to talk about it? Are they saying, yes, I'm so glad you brought it up. We are going to do something about this?
Look, so far, most of my conversations have been around women. And yes, I think because women can see the devastation and they respond. With men, it can be a little bit more trickier because I don't know what they're watching or what they're involved in.
So are you saying that out of all those statistics, where on the net, Fiji is one of the highest rate of viewers or users of pornography sites? Do we know what the breakup is? Is it the segmentation? Is it more men than women or more women than men?
Look, I don't have
children?
Hard facts on that, but you know, worldwide it is more men than women, just because of the way they're wide. But also, I mean, it is growing among women as well, and so women are not immune to this, and especially young girls because they've been exposed to it. So yes, but I don't have the breakdown.
What's the feedback been in the schools that you've been to, and you're talking about this? Are they?
Yeah, I've more been talking. I haven't dived deep into the issue of pornography. It's more been talking about the value of us as young girls, some of the pressures that are coming against us, and the ability to value ourselves and stand strong against. But that's been very well received, yeah.
Oh, that's been so interesting. We haven't got enough time. And really and truly, this is something that we should be discussing, you know, a lot more frequently than we do. And I thank you so much for that work, because it's important for our community that women and men who are being affected by this are safe and secure in their homes and the way they go around in our communities. So thank you so much, Letitia.
Thank you.
Fiji is ranked in the top 5 countries where pornography is the main topic searched for on the internet. Letitia's course is useful work that we can all get behind. That's all we have time for tonight. Remember, you can watch this and all our episodes on Facebook and YouTube. Join us next Monday at 8 p.m. for the season finale of On Point with Ellen Whippy-Knight.